Welcome to the new episode of our podcast on the spot zooming in the world. Today's topic is the political crisis and the collapse of the traffic light coalition in Germany and the upcoming early elections. And today I have a huge honor and pleasure to host Josef Lentsch, political entrepreneur, political analyst. Has been contributing to the various leading European newspapers and magazines like The Economist, etc. And he's also a book author, and also he is a founder and CEO of the Political Tech Summit. So, Josef, thank you so much for accepting my invitation.
Thanks for having me, Johan. Great to be here.
I would appreciate before we dive into the details of the political situation in Germany, maybe you can present your latest political endeavor. Josef is a really prolific person. So, latest political endeavor, the Political Tech Summit.
Happy to. So the Political Tech Summit is actually a first. It's the first time that this is happening in Europe. We will bring together 250 political professionals from across political families with tech startups, companies, consultancies, agencies, all of them involved in digital innovation. And what we want to do, of course, is help improve pro-democratic politics with technology. Of course, there's a lot of stuff happening. Everyone is seeing how much is happening in AI and how it is getting embedded in political campaigns and communication. But there's actually much more that is happening, from CRMs to social media monitoring tools, fighting hate, and other stuff that improves political management, communication, and campaigning. So this will be one day. We've got a great lineup and great list of speakers. You can register right now, and we would be very much looking forward to welcoming you in Berlin on the 25th of January. The URL is www.politicaltech.eu.
Thank you, Josef, for explaining about this initiative. So let's go back to the main topic, to the political situation in Germany. But I'd appreciate if in the beginning you can just explain the context of why this political crisis happened, why the traffic light coalition collapsed, and what is the path towards the early elections, I think, in February.
Absolutely. So the traffic light coalition, as it is called, between the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the Liberals, of course, has been a premiere when it came into place, when it came into being. It came into being under very difficult circumstances. Of course, there was first the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and then, of course, quickly followed by the Russian invasion and war against Ukraine. Like in other countries, the coalition has had a very complex challenges to face up to. And of course, in a three-way coalition, as this has not been necessarily easy, because of course the three parties, particularly the Social Democrats and the Greens on the one hand, and the FDP, the Liberal FDP on the other hand, are quite different in some ways when it comes to their economic policy, when it comes to the big issue of the debt break, and public debt and how to deal with it, but also when it comes to, for example, military questions like helping Ukraine. And it's not just two against one. It's often different kind of interest groups within the coalition that take different stances. So it has been difficult on the outside. It has been for a long time, comparably stable on the inside. But over the last weeks and months, it has become more and more clear that there are some fissures around some of the topics that I've alluded to. And over the last weeks, particularly, it has become apparent that these fissures might not be resolvable. And so particularly, the Liberals and the Social Democrats have disagreed on how to go about the public finances. Of course, with Liberals having the finance minister, the treasury, and then on the other hand, of course, the Social Democrats having the chancellor. And this has led to a breakdown of the coalition. So now we're facing early elections in February 2025, which is very unusual for Germany. Germany actually sticks to its election dates, but these are not ordinary times. So this is not an ordinary election, and I think we can delve into then also some of the things we may expect to see, like for example the question of whether the current Chancellor Olaf Scholz will in the end be ultimately the candidate of the Social Democrats for the election, which is again another question that is under normal circumstances would be very clear. Under the given very unusual circumstances, it is not.
Mhm. So on the one hand, you have this political disagreement within the coalition you explained, but on the other hand, there is agreement among the main political forces, members of the traffic or the former traffic light coalition and main opposition parties at this time, CDU, about protecting the federal constitutional court, about giving some kind of democracy safeguards. So there are some draft laws discussed in Bundestag related to this issue. So can you explain a bit further about this issue, about limiting also the terms of judges and limiting the re-election and introducing two-third majority for the election of judges? So I would appreciate.
Yeah, I think absolutely. So I think that I mean even though there is a disagreement about several issues, as I mentioned, the debt brake and other things, I think there's still a democratic consensus about many things. So that's the good thing, right? Germany is not in a situation, perhaps, as the United States may be in, for example. There's still a lot of consensus about many things. Now, of course, there are two things that are important. One, of course, is the rise of the opposition of the Christian Democrats. So they are at the moment polling in the first place. By far, they are at 32, 33%. And the Social Democrats, who have the chance at the moment, are around 15. So there's a big gap, about 2.5 months or 3 months ahead of the election. And then, of course, there's another important issue, which is the rise of extremist and populist forces, particularly in the former German East, but also on the national level. So there is, first of all, of course, the AfD, which is the far right party that has become more and more prominent, and that actually has won, at least in terms of the places, the first election on a regional level, even though they are not close to having the minister president there. But still, they are in an important position of leverage. And then, of course, there's a new party, which we could say is the nationalist left or a populist left, which is the Bündnis Wagenknecht, which is a younger, a more recent development of the populist parties and movements in Germany. So all of that to say that there's a lot of dynamic in the German political landscape, and of course the centrist parties, and that includes the center left to the center right, from Green to the CDU, are very much alert that we might get into a situation where populists and extremists are, actually gaining more seats, and we already see in the German regions, in the former states of the German East, that it's harder and harder to actually put together majorities, and the three-way coalition on the federal level has already shown that it's becoming more and more important to be creative, but also it's harder to sustain those kinds of coalitions. So I guess what we see right now in this interregnum between the traffic light coalition that the FDP has now left and the upcoming elections are attempts to still get stuff done, to still get some reforms in place, to not signal that there's a standstill, to also look at some constitutional issues. Of course, electoral law itself is something that is being worked on or has been worked on, which is new at this election. So there's quite a lot of stuff going on, and that is good, because I think the voters are already, of course, quite concerned that there's a long time until the election will happen, and in the meantime there will be the yes election. In the meantime, Putin is continuing to attack Ukraine, so Germany cannot stand still, and therefore reforms, also deeper reforms, still need to happen.
Mm-hmm. But going back to these laws that should regulate and safeguard the democracy in the federal constitution, related to the federal constitutional court, there are also some concerns that this really big two-third majority for appointing judges could lead to some kind of parliamentary paralysis and blockade, and then the alternative ways to elect these judges just could lead to some kind of democracy deficit.
I hear that. I think that's an ongoing discussion. I don't want to comment on that politically because I think there's there are different opinions on this. But yes, I agree that there's a danger in signaling that there might be a paralysis, and therefore I think what Scholz is still trying to do, and also what the CDU is, I think, exploring in opposition, is what they still can get done together despite the difficult relations between the parties. Certainly, the new election in February will bring a new coalition, whoever will be in first place. What is quite clear is that the traffic light coalition will most probably not have a majority. I think from the polling numbers, it's not impossible, but it's really improbable at this point. So there will be a different kind of setup. Therefore, yes, they're trying to get stuff done in the meantime.
Okay, we'll discuss these possible setups later on. But
Yes.
I would appreciate if you can also share with us the reactions to the victory of Donald Trump in the States, in media, by the analysts and political actors, and whether this victory will also, in a way, would have an impact on the election, the election campaign, and what would be the main electoral issues and platforms of different political parties in these elections.
Thank you. Of course, it's quite clear that the Germans, as much as Europe overall, would have wished for a different result of the U.S. election. Now, of course, the U.S. have made their choice and have voted, and now Germany has to deal with it. I think economically, Germany is already in for a rough ride. The economy was one of the reasons why the coalition could not be sustained, because there were different takes on how to improve the economy. I think everybody agrees that the economy is not in a very good shape, and with Donald Trump coming into office with potential tariffs and other interventionary measures that he will take. Of course, Germany has to prepare that things like its automotive economy and other things won't necessarily improve because of that. So absolutely, Germany's, it has been through the first Trump administration. He is quite hard to predict when it comes to moves. But I think that he's protective, that he's ready to implement tariffs, that he's looking to protect America's interests first, and is not so fond of the transatlantic alliance, neither security-wise nor economy-wise. I think all of that is pretty clear. And I'm sure that the public administrators are already taking measures to prepare for that. But politically speaking, of course, it's not an ideal thing right now with the political landscape being in the state as it is now in Germany.
Mm-hmm. So this is about the Trump victory. How about the expected political platforms and main issues during the campaign? Would be economy, security, geopolitical situation, war in Ukraine.
So in Germany, certainly the economy will be one thing. The other thing will be the debt break, the public debt, where the former coalition partners have taken very different stances. Absolutely, Ukraine. Again, Scholz has decided to take a very cautious or defensive approach when it comes to providing Ukraine with arms, or in his case, not providing Ukraine with, for example, long-range missiles, where the Greens and the Free Democrats and the CDU all take a different stance. So I think he's betting that a lot of the electorate is actually also cautious. And that's, I think, one of his arguments in the campaign to stick with him, because so far, Germany has not been at risk of getting involved in the war. So all of those issues will certainly feature. I guess climate change will feature less because it has been downranked by the voters. Other issues like Ukraine and migration, another issue high on the list, has taken a more prominent role in the campaign and also over the last weeks. So those will be some of the key issues, certainly, that will be thought about.
But you already mentioned that there is a rise of populism forces in Germany, both on the left and the right. So, what are the reasons behind such a rise? And also, I just read today that this year Germany will issue 200,000 professional visas, which is 10% increase comparing to the last year. So, you have let's say, a flood of new migrants coming to Germany. Is this one of the main reasons for the rise of populism?
Yeah, I mean, those migrants you're talking about, of course, are qualified migrants, because this is of the new law, and this is one of the successes of this coalition, that there is a law now to bring in more qualified migrants who are needed. I think the discussion and the debate is really about the unqualified migrants and the asylum seekers since 2015. Since the migrant crisis back in the day, and so I think this has been one of the unresolved issues that the public has a lot of takes a lot of issues with, and so yeah, I think this coalition has actually done several things, and this has been a success. But unfortunately, because of the difficult circumstances, it has not been as successful in communicating those successes, and now it's passed. So I think migration will be a stance where the CDU and also the FDP will take a more hard line, and the Greens and the SPD will take a more progressive line. And what we can see in the campaign is, at least the FDP has tried to make it a so-called Lagerwahlkampf, so a campaign of camps between the more kind of conservative liberal camp and the more progressive left green camp. Now, the Greens have tried to, of course, not accept that framing, because, of course, they would also be interested in coalescing with the conservatives instead of the liberals. So this will be an ongoing issue, but it's definitely one of the fault lines of the ongoing political debate, not just the campaign, but also over the last months and years, and certainly for the years to come.
You already mentioned that, let's say, the stronghold for populist forces, these two parties, which are interestingly led by two ladies, is Eastern Germany. But how about the other political parties? What are their strongholds, both regionally and demographically? And can somehow these industrial parts in Germany, especially this western part, could be compared maybe to Rust Belt in the United States and can bring such similar results in elections?
Absolutely. I think that's a very important topic, that it's not just about the German East. Of course, it's often framed like that the democratic deficit or the problem or the challenge and the growing discontent is mostly or most pronounced in the former German East. That's not necessarily the case. You just mentioned if you will, Rust Belt of Germany, Ruhrgebiet, and the former industrial regions and areas where there is some innovation happening, but there are also many challenges and problems that are not that have not been resolved to date. And where Germany, when it comes to digitization and innovation, is actually lagging other economies. And this is definitely one of the main challenges for the next government, to try to find some effective answers to that. So I guess the rise of populism partially certainly has been accelerated by the COVID pandemic and the discontent with the responses of the government. But there are some longer issues in Germany about the economy, about social security, about the outlook of people, particularly in the rural regions, about people leaving, particularly from the former East, and then whole regions are really getting older and older. There are less and less young people. And of course, people then have concerns that even though perhaps migration is not present issue, it might be an issue in the future. So there are many fears, and some of those fears are grounded, and the challenges behind those fears need to be addressed. And I think one could say that over the last years, not just over the last 3-4 years, but over the last 10-20 years, Germany has been unfortunately not quick enough and not decisive enough in disrupting itself, in disrupting its business model, in innovating, in getting ahead, and also taking a bit of a different mindset, more bold, more courageous, more ambitious. And this is now coming to bite Germany. Germany has too long, I think, lived off its substance, industrial-wise, economy-wise. And now, of course, the substance is starting to get fragile. So, Scholz, back in the day, has been talking about the so-called Zeitenwende, so that there's actually, a change of tides happening. Now, unfortunately, this Zeitenwende happened more rhetorically so far than actually in terms of policies. And again, I think this is a challenge for whoever will be in charge in the next government, that they will need to face up to.
And you mentioned innovation, since since you are involved in political tech innovation. So how about using this new technology solutions in politics, in political communication, in campaigning? What is expected to be used during the upcoming campaign?
Well, what is expected is that, of course, people are discussing about industrial policy. So how much, should the German state help some of its flailing industrial arms, like the automotive industry, like engineering, the some startup industries, and of course there are different political takes. How much subsidies should be there? Should it be rather kind of an innovation of other sorts, different kind of on the ordering the economy differently, but not subsidizing, so which would be more a liberal take. I think there are different ways probably to do this. But I think everybody's clear that they need to have a plan, and they need to show progress quickly in helping the economy, because it is one of the weaker ones in Europe, and the progress has been scarce. So that's definitely an area where there are different recipes, different policies, but also lack of progress. I think that's the biggest problems.
And how about using this new technology in the campaign, like AI? And we saw some controversial usage during the campaign in the US.
Yes,
How about Germany?
yes. I think just like in the US, I mean, there are already lots of usages of AI within political campaigns. Certainly, when it comes to, drafting texts, with using it for ideation, using it for saving time, for saving resources. I think that's what we already see. It's not yet this broad scale use of AI, because people are still quite cautious, and of course they don't want to be associated with a potential misuse of AI. We've had that recently that an MP of the Social Democrats shared a deep fake. I think it was about Friedrich Merz, the opposition leader, and then took it offline again and apologized because there was a public outcry that this, going down this road would lead, of course, to lots of problems. And so I think it's good that this is being discussed, that the public is aware that there's a reaction. So I think again we're not in a state as the US. Or also, if you look at India, where there's less regulation, and there has been much more of a use, but also, more innovatively, not just a misuse, but also innovative uses of AI in helping to reach citizens better. So, of course, Europe is slower. Germany is slower. Part of that reason behind that is regulation. Part of that is a different culture. But still, we see that not just AI, but technology is used more and more broadly and widely and deeply in political communication and campaigns. I think that is also a good thing because it can help reach people better, reach and communicate with citizens better. I think this is the way to go. So therefore, we're very much looking forward to looking at that, and also what's being used in the German election at the Political Tech Summit on the 25th of January 2025 in Berlin.
You already mentioned some results of the current polls and the polling, and that the traffic light coalition is improbable, let's say, to continue. So, what are the most probable scenarios after the elections, if the polls are correct? Is there maybe the grand coalition realistic after the elections?
So at this point in time, and of course, there's still a long way to go, and a lot of things can change, particularly in these days. But if you would look at the polls today, there is quite a high probability for a grand coalition. So the two things that are definitely workable at this point is a grand coalition, and then with a question mark, a coalition with the Greens, and then of course with a bigger question mark at this point, polling wise, a coalition with the Free Democrats. Now, I think if you would poll the Christian Democrat constituency and the elites, their preferred partner policy wise would be the Free Democrats, the liberals. But there the question simply is one of mathematics. Then, of course, the other take is the more pragmatic power view, and that points towards a grand coalition. Of course, the Greens want to have a say, but there's quite a lot of skepticism within the Conservatives towards the Greens. So this is why I think it's less probable than a grand coalition at this point, given the current polling at mid-November 2024.
And finally, taking into account Germany's importance not only in Europe but globally, so what could be the consequences of the election results and the new government on Germany's position in the European Union and its foreign and security policies? If you see some of the research on Germany, German citizens are in favor of increasing, for example, expenditure for defense, but they're against increased Germany's role in this increasingly divided world. But on the one hand, we have some announcements from the leader of the opposition that he will bring some kind of ultimatum to Putin, otherwise that Germany would send some weapons to Ukraine, and just I think recently there was a news that Germany would export these mini towers, kamikaze drones to Ukraine. So can Germany at the same time simultaneously finance this technological transformation, innovation, green transition, and also security and support to Ukraine?
So I think, again, looking at how it looks today and assuming that the Christian Democrats will come in first. So I mean, Merz and the Christian Democrats have already taken a more assertive stance when it comes to exporting weapons. Now, of course, if the Social Democrats are in coalition, they will also have a say. But I would assume that, particularly if there's a coalition with the Greens or the Freedom Party, the Liberal Democrats, then there will definitely be a change in policy, for example, when it comes to exporting towers, because all the other parties are in favor, as opposed to the Social Democrats. And also in terms of increasing military budgets and so on. I mean, the Social Democrats are the most skeptical, and as I said, cautious, and defensive. So virtually any government with no Social Democratic chancellor will be more assertive on that front. When it comes to Europe, I wouldn't expect that much of a change. I think Germans would still be, cautious when it comes to things like joint European debt and those kinds of things, and even more so, of course, under the Christian Democrats, under such a government. I think there might be a little bit of a change, of course, if Merz comes into place. With von der Leyen, also a Christian Democrat, they might have a better basis, to talk. Even though, of course, von der Leyen is from the Merkel camp, so to say, within the CDU, but still, I think there would be a better access of talking to each other, of influencing each other. But in terms of European policy, I wouldn't expect any significant or dramatic shifts, other than that there will be more readiness to invest more into the military, to provide Ukraine with more help, and potentially also be more assertive when it comes to trade policy and dealing with Trump.
Okay, thank you, Josef, very much for your deep analysis, for sharing your knowledge and experience about German politics. And I wish you a very successful political tech summit in Berlin, which will take place in the middle of election campaign, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, it's true. And so therefore it will be a great opportunity also to perhaps look backstage when it comes to the committees on the ground. Yes.
So thank you again, and I wish you every success in all your endeavors.
Thank you, Jovan. All the best to you. Thanks for the great talk, and hopefully also seeing you in Berlin in January.
Thank you.